Hi, hold on. I'm just going to share first para sa lahat ng nakikinig. Magandang gabi. Mag-share muna po tayo. I'm going to be doing the same kasi uh, just really quickly. Alright. For those who are early, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I'm just sharing right now. Give me a couple of seconds. Yan. And we're done. Alright, magandang gabi. Well, the big news today is that the President has said that, could you please check my audio kung okay pa tayo dito sa audio natin? Magandang gabi sa lahat. Huwag kakalimutan excuse me, like and share. And of course, yung mga hindi pa nagsusubscribe dito sa ating YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe. How's our audio? Could you please tell me? I have no idea what my audio is like. Oh, thank you kay Nano D for your super sticker. Alright, audio is good. Wala nang static. Gandang gabi sa inyong lahat. The big news today is the President has said na he will suspend all government transactions doon sa he will suspend daw all government transactions with the Red Cross if they don't submit to an audit. Ayan, si Ma'am Princess, sabi niya nagre-replay siya ng tambayan namin while waiting for Sutil Saturday. So, ayan, loud and clear, magandang gabi, lalong-lalo na dun sa mga nakatambay sa Facebook. Guys, if you're following already sa Facebook, don't forget to check periodically kung naka-follow pa kayo kasi mayroong mga nagsasabi na bigla silang na-unfollow. So, please do check, don't forget. Also, if you haven't followed yet, don't forget to follow. Dun sa mga hindi pa nagsusubscribe sa ating YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe. Nasa 51,000 na po tayo. Let's go for 100,000. Uy, bati muna tayo. Birthday ko po ngayon, sabi ni Leandro Madamba, ka-birthday niya si President Ferdinand Marcos. Pakibati po kami. Magandang araw sa inyo at maligayang kaarawan. Sa inyo pong dalawa, si Mr. Leandro Madamba, at kino-commemorate po natin ang birth anniversary ng yumaong dating Presidente Ferdinand Marcos. Sabi ni Benedict, most awaited time of the day. No, okay, so ang balita, yes, sinasabi nga ng presidente dun sa address niya this morning ay if the Red Cross does not submit to an audit, then kailangan he will suspend all government transactions. Now, is this legal? Of course it is. 'Di ba? Lalong-lalo na kahit man lang i-audit ng gobyerno yung mga binibigay through PCSO, kailangan mag-submit to an audit ang Red Cross, at least to audit the amounts that have been given to them. Although, nitignan ko yung Constitution, no? Ang sinasabi kasi ng COA, they can audit only insofar as what they have given. So, dalawa yan, di ba? Yung mga binibigay ng PhilHealth at saka yung natatanggap nila from PCSO. Pero yung sa PCSO, hindi lang naman once a year lang. May regular subsidy sila sa PCSO. And from what I understand, this is one of their major funding sources. The others are, of course, yung they charge for certain services that they render. Halimbawa, pag nagpapatraining ang Red Cross ng first aid, then they can charge a reasonable fee for that. At yung reasonable fee for that should be to answer the costs of the activity and certain administrative costs also of running the Red Cross. Okay lang yon. And the question is always, kapag merong ayaw magpa-audit, that's always something to be something that we should be concerned about, particularly if it is an organization that relies on contributions from the public, and in this case, subsidies from the government. You cannot refuse. You cannot refuse an audit. Okay? Alright, maraming salamat kay Ma'am Maria Ortigas. So, yung mga nagsasabi, virtually the debate on whether or not the COA can audit the Red Cross is moot. Sinabi na ni DOJ Secretary Maynard Guevara, I'm sure after intense study, na yes, pwedeng ipa-audit through sa COA. Pero what the president is also not saying is that he can also ask for an kung ayaw talagang ayaw ni Senator Gordon to submit to an audit to the COA, then the president can at least ask for an external audit of the finances of Red Cross. But here's the suspicious thing. Nagpa-pile up na kasi yung mga suspicions. Halimbawa, the failure to give the financial statements since 2016. Tapos, ito ang refusal to submit to an audit. Now, that makes you think, well, the FS is an ordinary part of the operations of any organization, maging NGO yan or government office, because you are funded, then you have to account for how you spend those funds. So, you will be forced to ask yourself, why does that in the ordinary course of business, you're supposed to be watching your financial transactions anyway. You should be watching, you should have a reckoning, an accounting of how you conduct your business and all of yung mga gastusin and how much comes in. So why would you resist an audit? 'Di ba? Kung ako nga yan, and even if yung iba kahit may tinatago, ang sasabihin nila, well, of course we'll submit to an audit pero sandali lang, something like that, just delay and delay. But this one is an outright refusal. So really the question is why are you doing this? So, and then the president is also in a fighting mood, di ba? What he's saying, essentially, is that, first you started investigating this, you were talking about overpricing, wala kayong nakita sa overpricing, now you're going into the bidders, now wala kayong makita dun sa bidders, now you're saying that the witnesses are being evasive, now you're trying to connect them to government, and so on and so on. Lumayo na dun sa original intent. When actually, the original intent, or at least what triggered all of this, was yung failure to give the special risk allowance ng ating medical frontliners. And it seems na nakalimutan na yung ating medical frontliners, nandun na sila sa kanilang witch hunt. Now, there's some people who are commenting dun sa page natin at sinasabi nila na, akala ko ba we're against corruption? Bakit ayaw ninyo itong, how do you call this? Itong Senate investigation na ito. We're all for a Senate investigation. In fact, ako, gusto ko nga malaman how is the DOH spending the money, how is PhilHealth doing, and so on. What about addressing why was the DOH returning money when it hadn't paid the special risk allowance yet? Kasi apparently last year nagsoli ng pera ang DOH kasi hindi nila nagasto, so it reverts to the treasury. Pero hindi pa pala nila nababayaran ang special risk allowance ng ilang mga health workers natin, to the point na ngayon nagrereklamo na sila. So, yung question na yun has been avoided throughout the entire Senate hearings. They keep talking about the bidders, they keep talking about, how come you gave 54 million, what did you do with the 54 million, and so on. And it was becoming ridiculous. Well, the real public interest lies in, possibly the mismanagement of the DOH. But certainly, it wasn't in this bidding. Meron silang hinahanap. May pinupuntirya dito ang Senado, and they're not getting it. So, they're getting increasingly frustrated. It has been 5 days already na naghihiring sila, and still no smoking gun. And now, the president is really upset because ang sinasabi niya, naaantala na ang pag-provide ng services ng DOH because they have to keep providing document after document after document when they should be out there dealing with the pandemic. Hi kay Ma'am Ilikara Moser. Thank you very much for your super chat. She's watching from Switzerland and she says, have a nice weekend. Sabi ni Bren Reserva, kahit di naman obligahin ng COA, sana nagre-report si PRC para maliwanag sa taong bayan na malinis ang opisina nila, lalo pag may share ang pamahalaan sa pera. Exactly, yun nga yung sinasabi ni Presidente. 2016 pa, wala na kayong FS nung time na yun. Hanggang ngayon, 5 taon na, mag-6 na taon na, hindi pa nasisilayan ng Presidente kahit isa daw na financial statement na binibigay dapat ng ng Red Cross pursuant to its law. Sabi ni Lons, Kasi naman nanahimik si President Digong, tapos panay sila banat sa kanya. Ayan, napuno sa loob ni Presidente, kaya humanda sila. Ito, sabi ni Ma'am Inday Bedak, thank you, nag-visit ka po kay Boss Badong Aretelis. Sa Davao. Okay. You're welcome. Gusto nga namin bumalik. Moonflower says, binalik ka ng karma ang mga naglilinis-linis sa mga solon sa mga ibinabatong korupsyon ng gobyerno ngayon. Good thing nabubulgan na din ang mga kabulukan nilang matagal nang itinatago. Ay po. Leandro Madamba says, tama po, kung ang NGO tumatanggap ng subsidiya mula sa pamahalaan, pwedeng i-audit ng pamahalaan. Bakit po sabi ni Chair Aguinaldo ng COA, hindi pwede daw i-audit. Di ba alam ni Aguinaldo mandato nila? Ito naman si Gordon, author siya ng Red Cross Act, maliban sa conflict of interest yan. Dahil chairman and CEO siya ng PRC, di ba niya kabisado yung mismong batas niya na mag-submit siya ng annual report at financial statement sa Pangulo? Yep, good points all around. Nasabi ko sa inyo, totoo yan. Bakit hindi ko makita yung ibang mga nagbigay? Ayun. Jean Bledsoe, thank you very much din po. Eto. Watching live, sabi ni Ma'am Melva from Canada. Go, we will skin alive the Senatong, especially Gordon Lacson, Curatong Baleling, and Piggy Drilon, the godfather of Mabilog. Oh my gosh, diba? The President referred to a relationship. Ang sabi niya, what is your relationship with former Mayor Jed Mabilog? And he was referring to Senator Drilon. You know, these pointed questions, medyo kinakabahan ako because the sending a message to the two senators that he has dirt on them if they don't stop their how do you call this? I want to be objective. If they don't stop the unreasonableness of the hearing, kumbaga, hindi niya pinapatigil yung hearing, pero yung unreasonable behavior, yung wala kang masagot na tama, galit sila parate, and so on, which is why I found it a change na itong si Yusek ng DBM, sumasagot na siya. Dati kasi he was very meek. Hindi siya masyadong sumasagot, yes or no, yung mga tanong that were humiliating, like paano ka nakuha na USEC? Kasi nag-apply ako. Which is true naman, even if actually the president wanted you to be an undersecretary, you will still have to give a letter of application. I have the honor of applying for the position, even if it was even if it's Malacanang who asks you, you still have to apply. So yes, he applied for it. Clearly he did that. There was a vacancy, he applied for it, he had the credentials, and so tinanggap siya. Ayan. The president is well aware kasi sa style ng mga senators, and at the same time yung framing ng storyline ng bayarang media. Ayaw lang ng presidente na ikasangkapan sila ng mga ambisyosong senador. Kasi sa totoo lang, sinasabi naman ng presidente, if there's dirt, there's dirt. Sige. If there's a crime, sige. Sisantihin pa nga niya yan. Pero yung umaabot na dun sa point na hukay sila ng hukay, and in the process, they're humiliating the officials, tapos wala naman silang nakukuha, then this becomes unreasonable. Vic P. De Juan Jr. says, meron po bang internal audits lang ginagawa sa PNRC? If meron, bakit no submission sila sa OP? Yung mga dugong free donations ng mga taong bayan na ibinibenta nila, ito ba hindi ino-audit din kung saan napupunta ang pinagpilhan ng mga dugo ng taong bayan? Okay, well, I'm glad you brought that up again. Alright. The unusual thing is that the Red Cross has its own law, diba? Normally, pag NGO ka, to get your tax-free status, yung to be tax exempt, sorry, not tax free, tax exempt status, meron kang application to the BIR, tapos parang vina-validate muna, ano pa yan, titignan pa muna kayo, there used to be a PCNGO na magkikilati sa inyo. They'll do the visits in your office, they'll check your files, they'll check your finances, they'll do regular interviews with you and with your members to see if totoo, legit yung organization ninyo. And if you can claim later on a tax-exempt status, that organization then will make a referral to the BIR na, ito, okay to, we've investigated it. And then the BIR will also conduct its own initial investigation bago ka bigyan ng tax-exempt status. Okay, now, it's what we call a tax-exempt donee institution. Ngayon, ang Red Cross, hindi sila dumaan sa ganyan. Nagkaroon sila kaagad ng batas, which led me to ask, well, sige, we understand, sobrang importante talaga ng trabaho ng Red Cross. They are recognized nga by in international humanitarian law, di ba? Na sila yung nakakapasok into areas of conflict, battlefields, battle zones, and by agreement of all countries, hindi dapat sila binabarel, they shouldn't be taken in as prisoners of war, and so on. Okay? So, because they have such an important role as an auxiliary of government, binibigyan sila ng special consideration. But the question is, are they exempt from the requirements that other NGOs have to go through? For example, every year, the other NGOs, they have to file with the SEC, their GIS sheet, their general information sheet. They have to file whether they have paid their taxes or not. They have to file a financial statement with the SEC every year. So, hindi exempt dapat ang Red Cross from that just because they have their own law. They are an organization sui generis nga, as Spock's Harry says. So, it now brings us into that gray area. Just because meron kayong sarili nyong batas, does that mean you're exempt from your opening your books? Does that mean that, let's say, the BIR cannot look into you, that the SEC cannot look into you? And in this case, since you are the recipient of public funds, does this mean that the government itself cannot look into you? I submit, my opinion is that they still have to do that. Yung batas, binibigyan ng silawan ng special recognition and special benefits or privileges that are stated in the law. Pero kung hindi nakalagay dun sa batas na exempt kayo from the regular requirements ng SEC at saka ng BIR, then you still have to do those things. Diba? Tama po, kung ang NGO nabasa ko pa na pala yun, sorry. Junel says, hi. Good evening, sabi ni Berniabes. Ang mahal na ng swab test ngayon, 8K Pangasinan area. My mother got positive sa antigen. Paano pa gagaling ang pasyente kung ganyan palang bayad? Hindi ba nire-regulate ito ng DOH? Actually, meron pong regulation yan. There is what we call a suggested retail price na sineset ng DTI at saka ng DOH. So, yung mga ganun na sometimes they allow a higher price kapag mas mabilis. Kunwari, normally it would take, 48 hours. Kapag kailangan mo ng 24 hours or 8 hours na resulta na RT-PCR mo, then you pay extra. That's what I understand that the labs do. Pero, you're right, naiintindihan ko po yung sinasabi ninyo that 8K really is hugely expensive. Pero like for instance, sa Red Cross, napilitan na rin silang binabaan na pa rin nila yung presyo. And now, meron na pong suggested retail price for that. Hang on. Abs! Excuse me. Ayan, sorry. Okay. My cat got scared. Alright. My other cat. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. I apologize for that. Eto, sabi ni Benjamin Hernandez, bakit wala akong narinig na ino-audit na senador ng COA publicly in spite that they're getting their funds and paid through people's taxes? They are audited. All of their offices are audited. And they should be reported in the COA page. I'm not sure if they are. In fact, I haven't seen them. I have to check again. But yes, they are all audited. Don't worry about that part. Ang ano lang nga is, and this is chismis, so I would like to overemphasize na chismis ito. Ang sinasabi ng, ang sabi-sabi, and don't put much value on it, but I have heard that some people in government say that COA is far more lenient with the Congress and with the Senate than they are with other agencies. Take that however way you want to. Eto, Putong Inamoy says, dito sa HK, RT-PCR costs only 3K plus pesos at results in just 2 to 3 hours. Sobrang mahal dyan sa atin. I agree. I completely agree. Although, the two labs that I have already been to, they only charge about that much, 3 to 4,000 pesos. But that's a 48-hour thing. And then if you want, 3,000 pesos for a regular one, for a 24-hour, for a 24-hour, 12-hour result, it's 5,000, 6,000 yata pagka So, yung mga ganon. They are going down. I have to be fair. We have to be fair then to the labs. The prices are going down as more people get tested regularly. Or not, well, yeah, there are people kasi who have to get tested regularly. Ito. Kay Junior na po, as COA themselves, ano yan? Yuan Edvalin says, ano masasabi mo sa closing remarks si Sal Conelo sa Talk to the Nation ni PRRD? I'm afraid hindi po ako umaabot dyan because I was concentrating on what the President says because most people report only on what the President says. Well, of course, and I was listening to Secretary Briones. Kasi, I worry about Secretary Briones. Ang daming haters and yet, because she does so much, there's so much that people want to misunderstand about her, and plus the DepEd isn't exactly the most popular department, so we kind of pay special attention to that one. So if you're going to ask questions like this, you're going to have to tell me exactly what you want me to react. So okay, rule dito sa ating mga sa ating mga live, you do not ask questions na ganyan. Anong reaction mo sa ganito? If you don't tell me what ganito is, I won't be able to answer your question. Diba? Or don't ask me, what about RA 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, so on. Don't give me the number, you have to give me the title, and if you're going to ask about provisions, you're going to have to ask me a provision para mabilis po natin masasagot. Kasi pagka yung ganito, anong masasabi mo sa closing remarks, but you don't tell me what the closing remarks are, then I can't answer you. Diba? Please don't assume na alam ko lahat, kasi hindi talaga. Lumayo na ang mga senador sa original na issue which is overpricing. Wala kasi silang makitang anomalya. Even the bidders, hinahanapan pa nila ng mali kahit dumaan naman sa tamang proseso. Dahil napahiya sila ngayon, naghahanap na sila ng ibang issue baka sakaling makapangisda. They're just wasting time. Ayan, I agree with that one. That's what we call in law fishing expedition. Ma'am Minerva, thank you then for your super chat. Sabi niya, stay safe, and she's watching in Aichi, Japan. Tama ba yung pronunciation ko? Yung maingay kanina was Belial. Siya yung cat ni Attorney Ahmed. So, maingay talaga si Belial. When you hear a loud, yung parang growling, medyo mababa, si Belial po yan. The rest are high-pitched, meow sounds. Those are the other cats. Daniel Ansay says, gandang gabi sa akin ng po. From the very first place, bakit po naging chairman ng Red Cross while being an elected senator? Di po ba conflict of interest or at minimum mahahati ang attention niya sa work? Imbis makafocus sa paggawa ng batas, in my honest opinion lang. From what I understand, there doesn't appear to be any law against that. With conflict of interest, yes, but you know what? In the legislature, and this is another thing that I really have to bring up, the legislature is so powerful na kahit yung mga ganyan na mga interests, hindi po naki-question. Kasi ang conflict of interest, hindi po siya necessarily against the law. And if it is against, let's say, the code of ethics of public officials, ang ina-argue kadalasan ng ating mga legislators, even if the law says otherwise, at ang sinasabi ng ating mga legislators is, it should be subjected to a code of ethics hearing within their particular chambers. Pati nga po yung mga administrative cases na dumadaan sa ombudsman, sinasabi ng ating mga legislador, kahit pa yan ang ruling ninyo, kahit ang ruling ng ombudsman ay against a senator, against a congressman, kailangan dumaan pa din sa Committee on Ethics nila, otherwise they will not pay any attention to it. Ang claim nila is that it's because they are elected officials, and therefore they have a mandate because they serve at the pleasure of the people. There's no appointing authority to them. Sabi nila, parang mas mabigat yung interest of keeping them in office because it is the people who put them in office. Yun po ang dahilan. Yun po ang basehan nila for saying that dapat yung sarili na lang nilang chambers ang iiral yung decisions ng chambers na yun. But as we know, bihira po yung mga chambers na yun na even mag-hold ng trial for an ethics case. So, it's not exactly very fair. Lalong-lalo na dun sa ibang mga elected officials such as but not limited to yung mga mayors, mga konsehal and so on. Sila din may mandato, elected din po sila by the people but they have no such excuse. Diba? Edwin Palma says, katulad niyan, madam, may alam ba ang mga mahirap na Pilipino tungkol sa usapin na ganyan? Ang alam lang nila, ang krus na pula ay kaligtasan na nila. Yun lang. Well, yes, I agree. That's why part of our duty as citizens also, hindi natin pwedeng ipaubaya sa media lang na sila ang maghatid ng impormasyon na yan dun sa mga mahihirap. To the best of our ability, we have to educate each other also. But to also watch out for fake news, to watch out that we are not delivering misinformation to serve our own agenda. Digna says, libre sa kanila, sobra yun lang mga nag-travel ang bayad, ay 60 euros lang naman, kamahal dyan lalo na hihirap ang mga Pilipino. Ngayon, if it is only the government that buys the test kits and conducts the testing, or may mga private laboratories that are under the supervision of the DOH, then kumbaga, there's some people kasi who are asking kung maaari, libre na yung mga test kits. Ngayon, if it's the private, yung mga tests, well, if it's the private sector that's doing it, then obviously they're going to charge. But if it's the government doing it, then it's meron kasi ngang PhilHealth, di ba? You can use PhilHealth to reimburse or to pay for at least one RT-PCR test. So, yun na po yung contribution ng gobyerno to helping alleviate yung bigat ng bayarin dito sa COVID. Sabi ni Ma'am Melanie Abali, akala niya pusa niya. Hindi, si Belial, minsan maingay minsan he picks a fight with one of our older cats, with the female cats. They might be in heat. Ayun, si Yusek Lau na nasa online class tinuruan si Drilon, natatawa lang ako kasi repeater session ang nangyari, sabi ni Thick Walls. Well, ako, I'm glad that Yusek Lau is now, kumbaga, more prepared for the questions that the senators are asking him. Kasi nung una parang feeling ko takot na takot siya na or that he wasn't prepared for yung ganong klaseng questioning, parang nabigla yata siya. So now he's at after so many sessions medyo nasanay na siya, marunong na siyang sumagot. In fact, 'di ba, sabi ni Senator Drilon, don't lecture me on this. Pero that's another thing I would like to point out. Senators are fond of saying something like that. Don't lecture me on the law. Don't tell me what the law is. I know what the law is. Something like that. But they do that to the resource persons. Ngayon, another thing that we have to remember, that this is an investigation in aid of legislation. Ibig sabihin, ang purpose nito ay para gumawa ng batas, ng bagong batas, amyendahan ng batas, i-repeal ang batas, or just leave the law alone. And yung purpose ng mga hearings no, ay para lumagap ng impormasyon. They're not here to look for fault. They're not here to look for a crime. They're here to determine whether or not they have to change the law because it is no longer responsive to the needs of the public. Ngayon, wala naman kasi din pwedeng mag-enforce nitong rule na ito that this is in aid of legislation. Kasi the three co-equal branches, the judiciary, the Senate, and the executive, and the judiciary will not check the powers of the Senate. Kumbaga, unless there is an actual case or controversy. So if somebody sues the Senate and it goes to the judiciary can determine, wait, is this within our scope? Or is this the regular exercise of a co-equal branch, in which case, hindi nila gagalawin yan. But if it is grave abuse of discretion, or there is a crime that is being committed, then the courts will take cognizance of that. So you see, there's no way, or there's little way to check the behavior of our legislators. And that's what I'm saying. Kukunti lang yung pagkakataon natin na i-corral o i-control yung behavior ng ating mga legislators, even if hindi na siya in the spirit of the Constitution, hindi na in the spirit of the law. So, and that's what I'm saying, the legislature is actually very, very powerful, and to the point sometimes where the executive can do very little about it, unless they're there to enforce criminal laws and civil laws and all, criminal laws, diba? Keisha says, pero may pandemic po kasi ngayon, nakakaistorbo po Senate sa trabaho ng gobyerno. And that is an excellent point. You are right. You're right. Pero, sino magsasabi sa Senado na, uy, tumigil nga kayo, pandemya ngayon. Or tumigil kayo. Diba? Walang pwedeng mag-utos sa Senado na gawin nila yon. Of course, the other senators, I'm waiting for, let's say, Senator Bongo, who has already spoken out, and Senator Boto, who has already spoken out. Pero parang nakukulangan ako, no, not sa kanila, nakukulangan ako dun sa mga passive members naman ng Senado. They're not telling anybody, like, my esteemed colleague from Olongapo, don't you think that you're overdoing it? Diba? Hang on. Yeah. Excuse me. Sometimes she gets very territorial eh. Pag kami lumalapit, maririnig mo kumakahol. So, tech classes, yung mga nananawagan na veterong pulis kay presidente ng tulong na binabaliwala na daw sila ng gobyerno pagkatapos sila ginamit na witness ni De Lima, nagtatago na lang daw sila. So kung ganyan mangyari sa susunod, wala na mag-witness kung mapapabayaan sila. Oh, I heard about that. Hold on. I understand na ang petition nila is ma-resolve na kaagad yung kaso. Ang problema is that the executive has no power over the judiciary. Ang nag-prosecute niyan is the DOJ, pero ang nagde-decide niyan yung judge. Ngayon, nababagalan sila because ito nga nag-interrupt ang pandemic at kakaunti lang ang nagiging hearings. Yung kadalasan nga ng mga hearings are conducted online, and yet, if you go to any of the courts here, I understand na lahat sila lumalaki yung backlog kasi hindi talaga nakakapag-conduct masyado ng mga hearings. In fact, may mga certifications ako na hinihingi. Certifications lang yun na hinihingi sa ibang mga hukuman. More than 6 months na hindi pa nila nabibigay precisely because we are under pandemic conditions. Now you have to understand that part. Pero naiintindihan ko din yung lagay nitong mga ito kasi nag-aalala sila dahil ilan ng mga witness ang namatay. And of course, even if they died of natural causes or there's really no suspicion about the deaths of these people, syempre mag-aalala sila. They will start thinking na ano ba to? Isa-isa bang tinatrabaho yung mga witnesses and so on. So I understand din po yung takot nila. Pero yung panawagan nila on the executive side might not work kasi nga it is within the call of the judiciary, at yung judiciary po, yung judge po ang nagdedetermine kung ilan ang mga hearings, kailan yung mga hearings and so on. Ngayon, ito nga si Senator De Lima, ang gusto nga niya is delay. And so, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's a conundrum. It's a difficult situation. Nahihirapan din. Yeah, I mean, it would be difficult. So, I don't know what they want the president to do other than that it will be the DOJ who will ask for a speedy trial or speedy resolution to the case so that they can protect the witnesses. Or otherwise, yung mga witnesses should be able to seek protection under the Witness Protection Program. Noli Castro says, niloloko lang tayo ni Mayor Isko. O bakit naman? Lang ni Mayor Isko ang tao tungkol sa libreng Tosi vials. Pag tinawagan niya mga number na yan, wala namang stock, tapos may tatawag sa'yo bigla magbebenta, sobrang mahal. About 75K! Oh my gosh! Kahit taga saan ka pa, tatawagan lang po ng doctor nyo, si Dr. Edgar Santos, and mag-provide ng abstract, prescription, and ID ng pasyente, and kukuha ng gamot. Ay, kahit taga saan ka pa. I don't... Are you advertising? Holy cow, huwag naman ganyan. Don't advertise. Relentless says, may kausap.
Okay na po yung gusto.
Thank you. Tasa. Natatawa ako nung pinapaliwanag ni Attorney Lau kay Vilon na alam ko na supalpal siya doon sa mga tanong niya dahil hindi niya na may lusot mga tanong niya, kumbaga investigasyon nila, parang namimingwit sila kasi kapag ang tanong pabor sa kanila, okay lang, tapos kapag ang sagot hindi pabor sa kanila, puputulin nila, ayaw nilang pagsalitain ang mga resource persons na bias nila, halatang halata. Ayun na nga. And it's a good thing you mentioned resource persons kasi nga that's what they are. They are resource persons. Hindi po sila witnesses. Kaya nga yung pag-exercise din ng contempt powers ng ating Kongreso is, how do you call this? It's problematic in this case kasi nga parang ano bang nangyayari sa inyo? Ayaw nilang yung sagot, sasabihin nyo ng evasive and so on. The people should be able, the resource persons should be able to speak up on their behalf and contest the conclusion at sabihin, Mr. Senator, I'm not being evasive, ganito. Particularly in the case of Michael Yang, napansin ko, he is barely, he needs a translator. So, diba, it's also possible something gets lost in the translation, he's being asked this or that, and sometimes I feel that the senators want him to incriminate himself, which is of course bawal, diba? Marlon Sumastre says, daming dapat gawin ng Senate para sa bansa natin, sana mahabol mga oligarchs yung mga ABS-CBN salot, hanggang ngayon nandiyan pa rin. Well, no, ganito yon. Yung sa ABS-CBN, ang natanggal naman kasi prangkisa nila. And so, bawal na sila mag-broadcast over the frequency that's owned by government. They're still free to go online. Diba? The corporate identity, the corporation still exists. So, they can do that. Parang tayo, libre tayo mag-broadcast online. Wala namang kailangan prangkisa para sa atin. Lahat, anybody can do that. So, wag nyo naman i-expect na they will implode. Hindi naman yun yung point ng gobyerno. The point was to get them off free TV. Kasi nga, hindi violate sila ng terms ng kanilang prangkisa. Or hindi na sila napapagkatiwalaan. Regarding po sa contempt ng Senate, hanggang kailan po yung detention? Then bakit di na lang kasuhan ng perjury to let the courts decide? Sana po masagot. Unfair contempt po kasi. Well, you're right about the feeling of unfairness kasi nga, it's the absolute power of the Senate. Sila yung magde-decide kung ano yung contemptuous behavior at hindi mo pwedeng masabi na grave abuse of discretion yan. The courts will not check the power of the Senate to do that. And especially when the Senate is doing its job or doing what it normally does. Bakit hindi nila kasuhan ng perjury? Because hindi nga nila kakasuhan. Like I said, when it's a Senate investigation, everything is within their power. Hindi sila, why would they sue you for perjury if they know that they're going to lose? Because there apparently isn't any perjury. Diba? Yung hanggang kailan ang detention? Well, it can be indefinite, pero ang deadline yan is until Congress goes into recess, until matapos yung Kongreso or until mag-recess ang Kongreso. So, you can be detained until such recess. Diba? Or until mag-adjourn yung Kongreso. So, matapos na itong, ano ba itong Congress na to? 14th, 15th Congress? So, yun. Pag natapos na ito, then, pakakawala na siya. Whoever it is. So, Chacha Pamor says, bakit hanggang ngayon di pa pinabid ng NTC yung frequency? Guys, why do you keep asking this? My answer doesn't change. I promise, if something happens with the frequency of ABS, I will tell you. But hindi pa nila ginagawa because the NTC says, and their answer also hasn't changed, is inaatupag daw nila yung digital TV. That's all. Hindi pa nila pinapabid out because inaatupag nila ang digital TV. My answer hasn't changed. It will not change. It will always be the same until something happens. And if something happens, I promise I will post it. So, yung mga frequently asked questions na ganyan, kung wala akong ina-update, then it's still the same answer. Parang yung bakit di pa nakakasuhan si Trillanes? Nakasuhan po si Trillanes, ongoing trial niya for naka-appeal yung libel niya, and then he has a case for inciting to sedition, and it is undergoing trial. Kung nagre-reklamo yung mga witnesses dun sa Delima case, then of course, naturally, we can also assume na yung mga kaso ni Trillanes ay nadidelay din gawa ng nitong pandemya na ito. May kaso ba kung ayaw mo magpa-swab test kung napatayan ka ng kapamilya na sinasabi lang na COVID kinamatay pero di nila swab test yung bangkay? Sino nagsasabing magpa-swab test kayo? Dati kasi, it's either magpa-swab test ka o magpa-quarantine ka ng 2 linggo. So, choose. Diba? Pagka ganun. And yung quarantine mo, you really have to keep away from other people. Pero there is a provision in RA 11332 that says disobedience to the health authorities could land you in jail. So, huwag masyadong mahaba yung mga comments, ang hirap basahin. Romel Racimo says, kung invited as resource persons yung mga ini-invite sa Senate hearing, bakit kailangan pa sila mag-swear in like that sa mga court sessions witnesses? Tuloy, sometimes they're treated like akusado sila. Well, it's in order for them to give accurate information so that they don't lie. Because it is, after all, formal and an important session. Yes, they have to swear in. Legal po ba na ikulong ang isang resource person na inimbitahan lang sila? If he is in contempt, yes. Iligan City, here's some dialogue between a doctor and his patient. Doc, what's wrong with me? Do you have PhilHealth? COVID. Yeah, but guys, yung mga ganyan na accusations, while I understand na laganap sila, we have to prove that. Diba? It has to be proven. So you have to keep, for instance, the medical abstract and so on. And then pag namatay, you have to document these things. It's not fair to make allegations like this and then not prove it. Parang sinisiraan natin ng PhilHealth. Yes, I get it that we do see that there's a huge possibility of corruption here. Pero hindi po sufficient ang chismis. So if you want, for instance, the president to move or to be moved by your panawagan na to do something about it, we have to provide a basis for that. Now, I've heard that time and again about the hindi naman COVID, kinlaim na COVID para makaklaim yung ospital ng mas malaki and so on at makalibre yung pasyente. I get it. It's scandalous. But if we're going to allege something like that, then we should, at the very least, provide some documentation that will spur on an investigation. Chismis is not going to be enough. Somebody has to swear to this. Sabi ni Dai Osalba, it's not the PhilHealth, it's the doctors and the hospitals. What do you mean it's the doctors and the hospitals? It's PhilHealth that pays. Diba? Eri Morisawa says, ganun pa rin po ba ang quarantine 2 weeks pag umuwi sa Pinas kahit fully vaccinated? Well, for updates, you're going to have to check the BI. But I understand it's a shorter period now, but yes, you're going to still, even if you're vaccinated, kasi nga, you can still carry the virus. That's the purpose of the quarantine. Very nice facial expression. That's one of the qualifications of the presidential spokesperson. What? Di pwede. Transparent masyado. Gusto namin ikaw yung tatayo sa podium sa BBM admin. Don't get me wrong. Spock's Harry is great. Oh my gosh. I'm sure Senator BBM, or Citizen BBM as he is sometimes referred to, has so many other more qualified people than me. I'm sure of that. Ouch. Ang init. Peter is asking, sino po si Bart Quincona? He's watching from Al-Qasim KSA. He's an actor who has been very vocal against the Duterte administration. Sana po, kumandidato sana kayo ni Attorney Gadon para sa Senado. Kailangan po kayo ng bayan. Well, Senator Gadon. Kidlame ko na no? Attorney Gadon is running for Senate, so don't worry about that. I can't afford it. And I really don't think that that it's my place to be in the Senate. Kumbaga, the politicking, I might not be cut out for it. I'm not sure. Really, seriously. If I'm asked to help, I will always help. Pero it doesn't necessarily have to be in a position, di ba? Paano po si Sec Duque? Wala pa po bang strong documentation that will prove that involved siya sa corruption? Wala. I mean, there's lots of evidence to his mismanagement, possibly incredible stupidity in some moves, ganyan, but actual corruption, as far as we can see, wala pa pong documentation as to that. And that's what the president is saying. Prove it, we'll remove him. Pero as far as I can see, wala pa siyang ginagawang masama. Well, for those of us who are really concerned about his mismanagement, ako personally, I think that mismanagement is sufficient reason to remove him from office. But now, habang lumalalim yung panahon, tumatagal yung panahon, the president says he's necessary. Sige, fine, whatever. But as far as I know, yung actual documentation of his involvement in an anomalous or corrupt transaction, wala pa po. Ayaw ko rin yung nangyayari ngayon. Parang vindicated na si Duque sa lahat ng kanyang mga kasalanan. Well, I disagree about him being vindicated. He still wasn't great at managing the pandemic. On the other hand, I also can't complain too much kasi hindi ganun ang hindi, how do you call this? We haven't the kind of death rate, or which, no, that's bad. Every single death is bad, diba? Every single life that we lose is a terrible thing. But on the part of government, nakikita ko hindi naman nagkukulang, kumbaga. Or at least I don't see anything in that. Yung nga, ito lang mga stupid moves like, and completely unnecessary moves. And things like ito nga, the inability to control the testing prices before, and so on. We did the best we can. The government does the best it can. But ang worry ko is that Secretary Duque has been making more mistakes than most. So yun. That's why people are so angry at him. Hindi ko makita yung super chat. Kanina yung isang super chat. Kay Apple 4S, teka, hindi ko mahanap yung actual post mo. Good evening, sabi niya, keep safe. Thank you kay Apple for us dun sa iyong super chat. Maraming salamat. Erin says, blessed evening. Ano pong masasabi niyo regarding sa decision ng DepEd to the opening of schools face-to-face na parang i-testing nila for a few limited schools and students? I actually agree with it. If it's going to be conducted only in areas where there's zero or very little COVID going around. For example, Batanes, 0 cases sila ng COVID. I agree na magkaka face-to-face doon. Diba? They're going to try it in certain areas para, hindi rin mabibigla when it's time to actually go back to school. Now, other countries are going back to school because mataas na yung rate of vaccinations nila, but in those schools, in those places, pinag-uusapan na nga nila whether or not magpapa-face mask pa sila sa mga estudyante nila. I think there is a need for face-to-face classes and social interaction of children of school age. It's absolutely necessary. But I don't think that we should rush it. So that's why the DepEd is being very careful also. Only in certain areas. And those areas should have little to no COVID. April, Annie 113 says, hindi ba against our constitution ang divorce? Bakit may proposal sa House of Representatives? No, that's not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says that marriage is the basic social institution. Kumbaga, it's the family that's a basic social institution, marriage being the most elemental form. And kumbaga, what it says is that the state must protect it. Therefore, people interpret that, as being against divorce. But that's what happens. So, for example, annulment, ina-appeal yan ng Solicitor General who is tasked to defend the marriage as an institution. And so, yung Solgen, ang kalaban nyo dun sa appeals. So, that's how it's being interpreted. But nothing in the Constitution says that there should be no divorce. Okay? In fact, if it said that the marriage is indissoluble, then it should say so in the Constitution. But we do allow annulments, diba? So maliit lang kasi yung difference between an annulment. What the legal fiction in annulment is that the marriage was void from the start, diba? And nire-recognize na lang yon later on kasi it's possible na hindi evident yung pagka-void ng marriage at the start. A divorce recognizes the validity of the marriage and then you dissolve it. So it's a small step between annulment and divorce later on. But since annulment is constitutional, a case can be made to say that divorce is also constitutional. But what you cannot dispense with is the defense by the state of the marriage. So I don't know how they're going to make the divorce law. How do you feel about Sec Onasang sort of endorsing Pisot kahit nasa gabinete pa? Dapat resign na siya for endorsing an opposition. You have to separate the political character with the official government. Like the president is both a political animal and the head of state. He can make decisions that are political in nature. He chooses his cabinet, for example, and so on. So, there's no law that says na kailangan mag-resign sa cabinet si Secretary Onasan pag hindi na siya ayon doon sa political alignment ng ating Pangulo. It's not a law. It remains in the discretion of the President. Of course, there's also this thing called delicadeza, diba? The President put you there, and since you're no longer aligned with the interests of the President and you're acting as his alter ego, then in the interests of delicadeza, he should resign, but there's no law that says he should. Arman says, paano malalaman if ang COA walang pinapabura na admin, like what happened during the time of Pinoy, daming unliquidated funds sa time nila, while Duterte admin, simple issues pinapalaki. Okay, yung pagpapalaki might not be COA because it's the media that's reporting it. So you have to check kung sino talaga dito yung at fault dun sa pagpapalaki ng issue. Now, COA normally publishes all of their findings. And so, the media can cherry pick. They can choose, oy, ito, palakihin natin to kasi scandalous yung dating nito. Mga ganon. So, it is, I seriously doubt that it's COA itself na may pinapaboran, so to speak. Can we guarantee that completely? No, of course not. And there are suspicions with certain transactions that, kumbaga, for example, and I'll say this again that this is chismis. There was talk during the Aquino administration, yung tungkol sa DAP and PDAF, na there were certain senators who clearly had dealings with Janet Napoles and other people like her. She wasn't the only person who was doing this. Pero hindi nilabas ng COA, hindi finlag ng COA, or COA did not allegedly reveal these names, like certain senators, certain congressmen, and so on. So these people were never prosecuted in their transactions with Janet Napoles. Chef says, naniniwala ako na sinasabotahe o kinukudeta ni Unasan ang DICT. Hanggang ngayon, wala pang target date ng analog switchover to digital television after a couple of postponements. Wala pang target date ng analog switchover to digital television. I think yung switchover is NTC, which is under the DICT, but Going Geek by Ian says, magka-Congress inquiry na po yung FBS per Representative Defensor. Hopefully, you get invited as a resource speaker. Yes, but even if we're not, we'll be fully supportive of that hearing. Marlon Barclay says, pero overstepping na po, parang unconstitutional yung detention if ganun kahaba. I just remember ATL discourse, kung mas mahaba pa limit on evading privacy and non-disclosure agreement, you have to distinguish. This is contempt. Okay? It's not a regular crime punished under the revised penal code. This is the power of the Senate to be able to control the behavior of people around people that they have summoned directly or indirectly. Diba? Whether their actions are directly contemptuous or indirectly contemptuous. So, directly yung pag-andun sila in the presence. So, I understand your feelings, okay? Naiintindihan ko that it all seems so unfair. And I wish that you had spoken up. Nung si Jason Aquino at saka si Nick Faeldo ng ginigisa, did you not see the unfairness in that one? Or did you also see that it was unfair during those times na yung ayaw natin ang ginigisa? I mean, my worry about this is that so many of you are concerned only now. And when this is something that we should have been calling out a long time ago. And in fact, in our case, we have been calling out for a long time. The masyadong matagal is not determined by the court or you or even me. It is determined by Congress. And the Congress, the rule that that was defined already by the Supreme Court is that, as long as you're in contemptuous behavior, you're going to be detained, but no further than the end of that Congress, or no further until recess. Pag recess, pakawalan ka na, diba? Even if you feel that it is unfair, it's not your call. Alan Gesalan ay Alsa says, sino na kaya ang maging standard bearer ng PDP-QC faction? Sana si BBM adopted member like Ticong. Let's see. It would be nice. Makes things easier for us. Saw the clip of Drillon from your post. I find it funny he gets offended when the truth is being shoved in his face. Nabasag kasi rhetoric nila, sunog. But, I wouldn't put it past Senator Drilon for a comeback. So, I don't like to, hindi ko siya gustong diinin kasi I don't want it to, yung kumbaga, he takes his lumps eh. To be fair, I mean, a lot of us aren't too fond of Senator Drilon, but I give credit where credit is due. This guy is smart. Smart. It would be a danger to underestimate him or to make him angry. Too angry, to the point na mapapahiya siya. Why, ask the reasons why can't PRRD disclose his SALN to the public. I don't think it's to the public he refuses to disclose it to. He just doesn't want himself to become target practice for everybody else. Look, there's the Senate hearing that was being called supposedly on the basis of overpricing. But it's a thinly disguised attempt to try to take him down. What he's doing is taking the ammunition away from them. Now, if they were serious about wanting to see the SALN, why isn't anybody filing a case? They say that they have constitutional grounds. Why not file a case for mandamus? I think you have to look at it also from that end. They want the president to keep refusing so that they can hold him up to be the bad guy. Nobody wants to file a case to settle the issue for good. Look, even the vice president, Madam Lenny, keeps saying, dapat ipakita mo yung SALN mo. Madam, humingi ka ba? At kung hindi ka humingi, what is your point here? Diba? O sige, para dun sa mga humingi at natabla, at sinabihan, let's say, ng ombudsman, ask from the president or ask his permission and so on. Are they taking the issue to court? They could. They say they have legal basis for doing that. Why aren't they? That's my point. The president can just say, I refuse to be your punching bag. Okay? Politically, good move. Now, let's see who's going to win a case. Diba? And the president has actually dared them. It's like daring them. Not gonna give it. No. He'll obey if the courts direct him to, but nobody is filing a case. Shouldn't we also be asking that question? Rex says, masyado ng toxic yung politics. Icebreaker lang muna sandali. Sa sports naman tayo. Suportahan natin, bukas may lahing Pinoy maglalaro sa US Open Final. Si Laila Fernandez. And yes, she acknowledges that she's half Pinoy. I like that. Eto, Dennis Gabaka says, di ko makalimutan yung kay late CJ Corona about the SALN. I agree. No, the problem with that case was that he filed his SALNs and that they were available, but they made a big deal about the fact na meron daw mga missing SALNs doon sa OMB. But they weren't missing from the Supreme Court. Automatic yung filing niya. He said that I filed my SALN. Sinasabi na wala daw sa OMB. But the Supreme Court had copies. So that wasn't the reason why he was allegedly found guilty. Yung supposed guilt niya was for having so much money in the bank. And having a condo that's supposed to be expensive. Diba? Monique Valle says, napahiya nga si Gordon sa pambabastos ni Trillanes sa kanya, pero tumiklop ang senador hanggang reklamo at kuda lang ang nagawa ng intellectual senador kuno. Ano po kaya nangyari sa Dasel Corbito murder case? Well, if you're talking about Senator Lacson, I understand that he has already been acquitted in all of the cases that have been filed against him. At least in all of the sensational ones. TC says, hindi dapat pwedeng gamitin ang contempt sa mga resource persons. Abuse of power lang ng Congress at Senate yan. Mga bully lang sila. Pag hindi ka nila gusto, pwede kang pag-initan para makontempt. This has been the case ever since. Diba? No, but I understand the powers of contempt. So that you can compel people. You subpoena somebody if they don't want to go. Contempt. Para they cannot refuse. Because sometimes it is essential. Diba? To get to the bottom of things in order for them to make better legislation. I think what you're looking for is that somebody must be able to control the discretion involved here. Not that we remove the power, but that there should be recourse. Na kapag sumusobra na yung ginagawa ng legislators, then there should be some point where you can ask a third party like the courts to tell them to stop. We don't have that that doctrine. There's a balance of power between the three branches of government, and they will not step into each other's jurisdictions. Ito, sabi ni Tok Tok, the ombudsman himself learned his lesson when he released his SALN. MSM said his net worth grew tens of millions in just 3 months, which is false and misleading. That is correct. Actually, yung I understand na parang it just got recorded when the tens of millions had already been, whatever increases in his net value where they were accrued earlier but appeared only in the books much later. I think that's how it happened. Tignan mo ito si Rain. Can I greet the most beautiful PH lawyer named Trixie, pabati ng happy birthday? Kita mo, hindi kailangan sumipsip. Happy birthday si President Ferdinand Marcos, PBM, Sandro, si Gordon, I refuse to read your hashtag, galit sa Talipandas, Cisco, kaso siya rin. Hello, Harry the Caller. Senior Moments asks, can COA refuse the directives of the President to audit PRC? If so, how can they be persuaded to follow? Persuaded? They will have to, they can obey, the executive can sue for mandamus to compel the COA to conduct an audit because it is their obligation to do so. So, yeah, courts can order it. Hindi nagawa. Hindi po talaga credited ang subject since SHA, okay, you're probably not talking to me. NRG says, pwede po gamitin frequency ng Channel 2 for positive news like accomplishments or announcements kaysa traditional media na anti-government sa mga walang internet. Yeah, I agree. If it ever happens. Nanawagan kay PRRD ang government witnesses against De Lima at pinabayaan na raw sila ng TAJ tulad yata si Guevara. I don't think that's what they said. They were, I saw this. Okay, I actually read it. Okay? What they're asking for is a speedy resolution nga to their case. Hindi na sila si Guevara. Guys, please, let's not go there. First of all, Secretary Guevara can only make broad directives. He cannot litigate the case for the prosecutors. So, yung prosecutors, they can ask for more hearing dates and so on. But ultimately, it is the court who will decide that. So, the limitations of what the DOJ can do is for the prosecutors to ask for more hearings or more trial dates and so that they can finish with the case right away. The right kasi to speedy trial belongs to the accused. And so, it's Senator De Lima actually who can ask for a speedy trial, but she's not interested in one. She's hoping that a more friendly administration will come in 2022 and she can get acquitted. Well, politically, I guess. She can make, the case can have a political resolution or something like that. So, it's not fair. Alright? It's not fair to blame the DOJ for this or to blame the prosecutors. It's not the executive branch that has the power to determine even the hearing dates. They can only ask for the hearing dates, but it is the court that will grant it. Carlos says, what if you tell the truth in the Senate but senators think you're not? What will happen? Being in the mercy of the senators who want to hear what they like. Well, like I said, there's the power of contempt, but limited nga yun. You can be detained only up to a certain time and then they'll have to let you go. I think naman that it hasn't happened, ha? Or I haven't seen it happen yet. Well, okay, sige, in the case of Nick Faldon. Pero si Nick talaga, he dared them to, to put him in jail or to detain him because hindi naman yung takot sa ganun eh. Ian says, alam niyo ba kung kailan pwede mag-appoint si PRRD's COMELEC at COA, yung pinaka-commissioners na kakampihan, at ilang years din po ang term nila? Well, I have to look, hindi ko memorize, but please take note that in the COMELEC, all of the commissioners except for one have been appointed by the President. So, think about it. Please explain further about federal and parliamentary form of government, even not tonight, just at your own convenience. This time I actually talked about it. Kinuyog ako ng mga yung mga mahihilig dyan, nagpupush niyan. Which is why I said never again. I'm not going to talk about it again. At least not, set aside a period for that. Because they are, not only unfair, yung mga tipong, they think that only their opinion is important and they're the only persons right. And they don't give any room for rational discussion or even for opinions that are not their own. So I really don't like to talk about this. I will talk about certain pros and cons in isolation. Like I talked a small bit about one of the problems that I foresee in a parliamentary system. But no more. Not going to do that anymore. If you want, there's so many discussions going on in that group that cannot stand other opinions, and I'm not inclined to join that. Mina Saluna says, ano po ang assurance sa darating na botohan kung Smartmatic ang gagamitin? Kahit walang Smartmatic, there is no assurance at any time. Okay. How do we hedge against Smartmatic? We have to be united and there has to be a decisive victory. Not just in the nationals. Kasi a lot of the times, nakatutok tayo sa nationals. O sige, but in almost all cases, na yung naboto natin, yung head, like in a certain province, na naboto yung governor, pero lahat na nakapaligid sa kanya ay kontrapartido, then not very much work gets done because there are people who are uncooperative. So we have to win decisively in as many positions as possible. So, not just president and vice president, Senate, mayors, councilors, vice mayors, and so dapat ibasura na natin yung mga non-performing dyan sa gobyerno. That's the only way we can actually defeat the system that could be skewed against us. JAT says, yung magiging bagong quarantine levels na ipapatupad sa September 16, nationwide po ba or exclusive only sa Metro Manila? Wala pa po silang sinasabi. Ang alam ko is that sa Metro Manila, GCQ na on September 16. I'm not sure because each province is treated differently. Celine Jo Sescon says, pwede po ba tayo protesta na ang prangkisa sa ABS ay ang gobyerno lang ang hahawak o di kaya hahanap tayo ng mga tao katulad kay Jason sa tapos na po, wala na pong prangkisa ang ABS-CBN, madam. So I don't know, wala pong may hawak ng prangkisa, walang prangkisa po ang ABS-CBN. Flavie Serafico says, need ba ulit natin mag-register for 2022 elections kasi may registration ongoing ngayon? The registration for new voters or for those who need to reactivate their registration. Kung hindi po kayo nakaboto in 2 consecutive national elections, then you have to reactivate your registration. Carlos says, thanks for the light. Sana meron din double-edged effect for pulsing and placing an innocent person in contempt. Nakakahiya din po na hindi ka paniwalaan. The truth will set you free, but the damage has been done. I know what that feels like. Yung ko-convict ka on unfairly or mako-convict ka for something that you did not do. Yung mga tipong collateral damage ka. Ako nga si pambansang nadamay, di ba? So I know what that's like. Bakit pilit pa din, smartmatic pa din ang magbibilang sa election? Daming negative issues sa kanila, di pa din na blacklist. Well, the Commission on Elections is an independent constitutional body. The president has no control over it. Only supervision in the sense that he is the head of the civil service. So, but aside from that, he cannot control the decisions of the COMELEC. He cannot substitute their decisions with his. That's what we mean by control. Ngare, may ahensya. Let's say the DOJ. For certain decisions of the secretary, the president, it can be appealed to the president, and the president can tell the DOJ secretary, no, reverse that. That is control. But the president has no control over the COMELEC. So the COMELEC decided that Smartmatic can still qualifies to bid, and it just so happens that Smartmatic keeps frigging winning. What can you do? Diba? There are certain things that we can put in our laws to control discretions like this. Pero it also requires, the president can also ask, or can also, initiate an investigation into these bids and awards. But I don't think that any president has that kind of with all the things that are going on, and especially with the president being under attack, his attention is limited now to just so many things. Hindi niya kaya lahat yan. Again, like I said, for all of these changes to be completed, para maging ganap lahat ng mga pagbabago nito, kailangan susunod na ipagpatuloy yung naumpisahan dito mga pagbabago. At maisama na din dun sa vision yung pagbabago dito sa electoral system natin. And if you want any of those changes, you have to make sure na ang iboboto natin sa lehislatura ay yung naaayon dun sa ating iniisip, ay sang-ayon dun sa mga pagbabago na gusto natin na inumpisahan na nitong administrasyon na ito. Bakit po sa election kami andito sa ibang bansa, sa sarili naming province, hindi kami makaboto ng mayor, vice mayor at sa iba? Ang pwede lang presidente. No. Ang OFWs lang po, hindi pwede magboto sa local. National lang po ang maaari ninyong iboto. Pero pag nakauwi kayo dito, i-convert nyo po, ipapaalam ninyo dun sa COMELEC na nandito kayo at dito kayo boboto para mabago po yung para maaari po kayo mag-participate locally. Kailangan ipaalam ninyo na dito na kayo boboto. Snow Carpenter says, mas dapat pagtuunan ang namumuno sa lokal mula governor to kagawad ngayon pandemya. Alam na naman na siguro nyo mga ginagawa ng mga namumuno sa lugar ninyo maging mapanuri sa pagboto. Lalong-lalo na po dahil mas malaki na ang internal revenue allotment ng bawat LGU. May slum programs or laws po ba para mas maprotektahan at mapromote ang cultural heritage natin as well as historical landmarks? Republic Act 10066, which is the National Heritage Act of 2009. Republic Act 10086, which is the new law creating converting the National Historical Institute to the National Historical Commission. For archival records, it's the National Archives. For books and other incunabula pre-books, it's the National Library. What else? For the intangible cultural heritage, it's also still the NCCA under its Gawad Manlilikha ng Bayan program. and Intangible Heritage Program, but partly also with the CCP and partly with the National Museum. So these are the agencies that are concerned with conservation and protection of cultural heritage and the laws that pertain to them. Also referred to the new National Museum law. Last two, because my dogs are getting restless. May mga strong Aldrin says, is it possible for Mayor Sara and BBM to be adopted in PDP Laban as standard bearers, assuming that PDDR will not pursue his VP bid? I don't think it's necessary for either adopted as it's a ball. Out of time, sabi ni Boss Bobby Fajardo. Exciting to see the MRT trains being set up in its tracks. Funny to read comic reactions of netizens, i.e. bubble wrap like a Lazada. Talaga? Ang cute naman. Okay. Sinong natatakot sa aso ko? Sabi ni Masterminded Mind, natatakot siya sa aso ko. Well, my dogs are very territorial. Actually, so are my cats. So, Antonio says, how can we make sense of the annoying voter registration campaign ng Dilaws, Wokes, or some brands? Dati allows naman yan. Because, well, the chismis is that, okay, if you're into conspiracy theories, it's this, is that in order to conduct massive vote fraud, you're going to need a certain number of votes that you can play around with. So you ask for new voter registration, but no new voters or very few new voters actually register. And so you have that number of votes that you can control. That's the conspiracy theory. Underscore, conspiracy, double underscore, theory. That's one way to make sense of it. Diba? But it's not really a bad thing to get new voters to register and to vote either. So that's our conundrum here. I think that we should ask people we know, our family, friends, relatives, etc., to reactivate their registration and for our kids to register to vote para, they get used to the electoral exercise, and if they're like-minded, then you get more votes for the people that we want to win. Bakit wala pong nangyari sa petition ni BBM about Smartmatic Dayaan regarding VP position on? Tapos eto na naman ang election, pwede na naman bang mangyari uli ang Dayaan? Alright, hindi pa po tapos kasi after the Presidential Electoral Tribunal ruled against BBM, they elevated it to the Supreme Court. Although it's the same people sitting, it's a different body. So, hindi pa po tapos. Hindi po masasabi pang wala pong nangyari kasi may nangyari nga, and in his case the Presidential Electoral Tribunal ruled against him, so may nangyari, but it's still with the Supreme Court at wala pa pong resolution for that one. So pwede ba na naman bang mangyari uli ang Dayaan? Sir, even without Smartmatic, like I said, there's some things that we cannot anticipate and that could possibly happen. Dati nga, nung it was a manual system, nagkakabalot box snatching and so on. Pero at least noon, kung merong mang Dayaan na ina-attempt, nahuhuli. May NGO na nakinabang sa SPF ng PAGCOR from 2005 to 2010. May kaugnay ito sa isang local official. Nakinabang ito hindi lang sa city niya. Wow. Thank you, Sir Alex. Alright, last, in commemoration of the birthday of former President Marcos, what is FM's greatest achievement in the country for you? He had a lot, actually. Let me see. I think it was saying no to the Americans. That was one of his, kasi it's hard to limit it to one, he had several. So I'll limit myself to two. Is that it was Ferdinand Marcos, Mrs. Marcos made the CCP and all of that, but it was Ferdinand Marcos who first introduced us to heritage conservation. There's a law that was enacted in 1968, the Heritage Conservation Act, the Heritage Conservation and Preservations Act of 1968. And he was in full support of this. He was the one who instituted the National Artist Awards, naming first Fernando Amorsolo as our first national artist. And then he also declared national cultural pleasures, several buildings, most of them were churches, as national cultural pleasures or national historical landmarks. So the recognition of built heritage as important enough for us to save them and to put plaques on them so that they could be noted, it was begun by, well, the plaques, matagal na nag-start yan. But it was Ferdinand Marcos who declared cultural pleasures, national cultural pleasures, and national historical landmarks, and gave the law some powers so that they could be conserved and protected. This preceded the law that we created in 2009, right? The other is, of course, saying no to the Americans and demanding payment of rentals on the U.S. basis. This possibly could have led to his downfall, but it was, we stood up to a superpower, and that took guts. Okay, so I think those two for me are possibly his greatest achievement. Of course, you're asking, this is just an opinion. No? I'm sure there were far more important ones, but these ones are the ones that I recognize as very important for me. Okay, maraming salamat. I agree with you, sabi ni Ian, and may I add the long-standing infrastructure that we Pinoy still benefit to this day. Yes, I agree. Oh, the LRT. Alright, maraming salamat sa pagsubaybay sa sa live natin ngayong gabi, Sutil Saturday. Let's see, if we do a Sutil Sunday, it will be a surprise somewhere in the middle of the day. Maraming salamat. Sometimes kasi I get tired, inuubo pa rin ako eh. Maraming salamat again sa pagsubaybay nitong live na ito. Huwag po kakalimutan mag-like at mag-share. At huwag din po natin makakalimutan to check yung mga nakafollow sa Luminous. Mag-check pa rin po kung nakafollow pa rin. At kung hindi pa po kayo nakafollow, please don't forget to do so. And also to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I hope everybody has a good weekend.